Hello and welcome to Angel's Costume Behind the Scenes. I'm Jeremy Angel.
I'm Richard Green.
And I'm Jonathan Lipman.
This week, we're happy to introduce my interview with Viveene Campbell. Viveene is someone who I actually sort of came up with. She started at roughly the same time as I did as a trainee, and she's now a supervisor, and she is definitely one of the nicest, most friendly supervisors to work with and people in the industry.
I think the chat with her was very open and relaxed.
I thought it was a really nice interview, Jeremy. I thought she came across as indeed she is, as a very happy-go-lucky and very kind of laid-back person, but one who thinks very deeply about her role and what she does, and actually, achieves great results without a lot of sort of shouting and screaming. Hands-on and calm were two phrases that she used.
Yeah, and her process is very clear.
And the thing I like with Viveene, and we don't deal with it too much on the conversation, but we know from working with her, she does have a core group of, for example, not standbys, but costumiers that she works with when she goes from job to job, because she trusts them and she knows, for example, she can send Robert and Sarah, who are the two people she uses quite a lot, into Angels because she trusts what they'll pull and they'll do it in the time that she wants. So she does have that as well. So she's very aware of who she can use and when.
And I suppose that relationship developed because of the work that they do for Michael O'Connor.
I met Viveene on 28 Weeks Later playing with the zombies. I believe her title was Costume Bile Person. Some very, very weird title that she had on 28 Weeks Later.
I've heard of a costume buyer, but never.
But no, that was the first time I worked with Viveene.
It was interesting that Viveene corrected herself. At one point, she referred to extras, and then she corrected herself and referred to them as supporting artists. I'm not quite sure when that phrase first came in.
I think it was, I know at the tail end of me, so around 2004, 2005, we had to start referring as ADs to them as SAs or supporting artists. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but obviously it hadn't made a big enough change to stop Ricky Gervais creating.
I was going to say, I don't think that show would work quite as well as being called supporting artists. Do you?
No,
It's a union classification, and it's to do with pay.
Actually, oddly enough, it used to always be not a joke, but it used to be the thing you'd say was the most protected people on the film set from all the crew were actually, aside from the leading actors, were the SAs. They had far more protection than half the crew do, which is probably something we talk about in one of your conversations coming up in the next few weeks, Richard, with the two Charlottes.
Yes, the Beck twos.
We hope you've been enjoying these conversations. We've certainly been enjoying your feedback. We've had several comments about who we should speak to and some suggestions. Please keep sending them to podcast@angels.co.uk. You can find us on our website. We are www.angelsbehindthescenes.com. Or you can find us on social media. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are /costume podcast. And here is my conversation with Viveene Campbell. Today I'm chatting to Viveene Campbell. I've worked with Viveene since, dare I say, 2007. It's been a long time. We worked together on 28 Weeks Later and several other productions. I'm very excited to be able to talk to Viveene. She's been working in the industry quite a long time and actually has quite an intriguing way that she got in. But first and foremost, Viveene, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thanks for having me.
I think you've got lots to say, and I think it's great to speak to someone who's still at the beginning of the journey, as it were, as where you are as a supervisor, as you've only sort of stepped up, if that's the phrase, in the last few years. So it's all quite fresh in your mind. And I think you'll have a really interesting perspective for everyone that we're going to talk to. I like to start all of these off with a very nice, easy question, Viveene, of where did it all start? How did you get into the industry? How did you get to be a supervisor?
Well, I started back in 2005, not supervising. I started on a scheme called FT2, which was film and television freelance training, which costume wasn't even a consideration. I didn't know of it as a job. When I applied for FT2, I used to work in Stratford Theatre. So that was my first look at.
What did you do at Stratford?
Stratford, I made costumes for the costume department, and I was the deputy box office manager.
And FT2 sadly isn't a scheme that exists anymore, but just for anyone who doesn't know, FT2 was a great, the concept behind it was fantastic. It would give you 2 years of working basically almost in every department as well as costume.
In every, which was brilliant, because you you get to see from other departments what their struggles are or what they see. So for me, I always remember working in the sound department and just knowing how much they can actually pick up on those microphones, and in the camera department, seeing how the costumes and everything changes when they put certain filters in. So it was a real insight into all departments, which was, I feel, really a good thing to have experienced.
It's very similar to the some of the university courses that we've spoken to people about, that they basically didn't allow them to specialise. They do everything so you can understand how everyone else works and what their issues are before you become completely centric on what you're doing. And it gives you a far, as you just said, greater understanding of, you've got to keep your voice a little bit quieter because they can hear you, and what the camera can see. So were there any other departments that you really enjoyed, or did they all just confirm for you, no, I have to be in costume?
I don't know if I enjoyed them as much. It was a useful, I feel like it was more a useful tool because I'm a clothing based person. So it was never to go anywhere else.
And where did did that start for you? So if you're a clothing based person and you were doing the sewing and things beforehand, where did that all start?
My mum,
Mm.
both my gran and my mum, my gran was a garment technologist. So the designer used to present her with a design, and she would make the pattern and create what their picture was. And then my mum had always been a sample machinist when I was young. So she used to work from home sewing for factories.
Mm.
She still makes clothes now, even though she's not within the clothing industry anymore. So it's sort of just, I suppose, in my blood.
And you enjoy? Do you still make stuff in your spare time, or?
I do. Yeah, I do. Not as often as I'd like because there's not much spare time. But
What do you mean? You've
I
only
do.
got another business, a child running around, and your day job. What do you mean?
Exactly. No, I don't do as much as I used to.
Can you describe for me what you, as far as you're concerned, what a supervisor is?
Ooh. We sort of, I would say, we pick up the pieces or lay the foundation to try and make everything go as smoothly as possible. So our roles are, in my view, is quite a quiet role. Like, nobody really knows what you're up to. It's only you that's doing it, but you're laying the foundation for all the other bits of the department so that they can do a good job for the team and for the design and for the director. So I feel like I'm a foundation layer.
How did the journey to get to supervisor? What is that route that the route that you've taken to get to supervisor? How did you work your way up? What are the different roles that sort of lead the way into supervision?
I've done quite a few roles within the costume department. I was standby for 10 years. And then which was, maintaining costumes on set, maintaining continuity and all that sort of going. And then I started crowd supervising, which you look after the crowd element of the costume department and all the essays and the preparing of the costumes for the essays. And then I went on to supervising. So I sort of do supervising and crowd supervising together. Like maybe I'll do a job supervising and then I'll do a crowd supervising job. So I still do both now.
Just to explain what the crowd supervisor is basically when there's a large crowd day for a production, there's so much work that goes into it, not only setting up an area. So let's say you've got 100 extras that you've got to dress, you've got to then put a team together to pull 200 costumes to fit those 100 people. The 200 costumes you pull have to be within the designer's world and be approved by the designer or their assistant, and you don't always get access to them, so you sort of get a quick meeting with them before you start pulling, and there's a lot of, not pressure, but there's a lot of trust put in you by the designer that you're going to fulfill the vision, and the next time they might see it is once you've taken all the photos of the costume and got that approval, and then you've got to get all those costumes to set, get everyone dressed on set, and be planning the next day where you've got the big crowd scene being filmed at the time. Is that
I think that's a good explanation. Yeah.
I used to, as an AD, I used to love doing crowd more than sometimes the standby work. Is it the same for costume? You get more fun?
Yeah. Even though crowd is really important, there's a little bit of, there's not so much pressure on you as crowd, and you can get to be more, your more creative side can come out, because as a person you sort of build a story within a story. So you could be fitting an extra essay, and you've made up a story with your other peers to how that person should look, and it's just a bit more. You're more hands-on when you do crowd supervising, and I love doing a good get in and a good get out and the setup and all that. So it's a bit strange, but I do enjoy it.
And what to you makes a good supervisor?
I think being able to communicate and, be able to read a situation sort of, and being able to talk to your designer and not taking offense to certain things, because you get a lot thrown your way. So you have to have a thick skin.
Very, yeah.
Yeah, you have to have a thick skin. You have to be able to look ahead of time, be able to spot problems before they actually arise. And you need to be able to build a good team around you and be able to speak to every person in the same way each time.
I'm going to pick up on the team comment you've just said there, but before, the other thing I think that you offer as a supervisor, and you've actually always had it as a standby even when you were a trainee, and I hope people can get it from listening to you, is you're a very calm person. You're very calm most of the time, and that is one of the most reassuring things when whatever might be going on and you've got all chaos, that you're talking to people so calmly and you're not losing your temper or anything. I've actually never seen you get angry. I never want to see Viveene get angry, but you're very calm, and that's very reassuring for everyone you're working with outside of costumes. I'm pretty sure that has to be a bonus for the designer and the rest of your team, knowing that even if chaos is going on, people talking to you will not realize it, and they'll be just happy.
I think you're right there. I am quite calm most of the time. My family might say something different, but I am quite a calm person, because I suppose you can't solve a problem if there's chaos around you and you're reacting with chaos as well. The problem will never be solved. It's just adding fuel to a fire, so it's not going to get sorted out. And I suppose panicking, even though I do panic, but I don't know how.
Well, I've never seen it.
I don't think many people do, but you can't. It's not going to help the situation. I find it's just going to cause other people to panic with you, and then nothing will get solved, and it will just be more pandemonium, which you really don't need.
I mean, you mentioned before about the team. How the two questions when it comes to the team: how do you go about creating a team on a production, and how do you divide that between yourself and the designer? In that sense, I mean, how much input does the designer have on the team that you put together for them as supervisor versus, oh, I want this one, and they'll get on with the designer?
So with the designer, I'd probably start by, if I hadn't worked with the person before, ask them if there's anybody that they want in place. And usually their assistant, I wouldn't get involved in the assistant designers unless they stretched all their people. So I'd only get involved if they couldn't find anybody that they wanted. I've got core people that I like to work with, just because we can speak shorthand to one another. So you can say something to them and they know exactly what you're talking about or what you're thinking, or they can pick up on certain things, and you don't have to do the whole explaining thing, which is really nice, that you can get to a point where you can work with people and you like them and
you trust them.
That trust is really important within your team, I think, because you can sort of switch off from certain things and know that they're only going to come to you if it is an actual problem. And when they do come to you, you know that you have to deal with that, because they wouldn't say anything if it wasn't a problem. And also people that enjoy it and love it like I do and will work hard, I suppose. That's my things, and are nice. I like nice people. I don't like working with anybody that's one of my top things, to be nice. If you're not, it can't work with me.
No, and you spend more time with these people than you do with your family, so you've got to be able to get on with them.
Exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned the design assistants. How does that work? I mean, is there a clash sometimes between the supervisor and the design assistant with the work overlapping, or not at all? Are they definitely separate worlds?
I think there can be, but as a supervisor, you've got to remember that your designer needs to feel comfortable with who they're working with, and that is, you're all trying to create an end project So if your designer feels comfortable with them, and you've got to let that slide. If you've got any sort of problem, you've got to step back and park that. Saying that, I've not had that. I've been lucky and I've managed to get on with near enough everybody that I work with. But I think if you have got issues with an assistant designer, you have to park that, because that's not at the forefront. The project is.
And what's the it's a horrible question. I apologise for asking it, but what's the end goal for you? Where do you want to go in this industry in costume?
I don't have. Oh,
sorry.
So you know what? I don't know. I'm happy where I am at the moment, because I have the power. Maybe that's not to be able to work with people that I like and that I respect. I'm able to dip my hands into something creative and be organising things and have a bit of fun at the same time. So it feels, at the moment, I feel like I'm in the right place. So I don't really want to be the face of it, because that's just not me. I'd rather be in the background, away,
pulling the string.
Yeah, exactly. I know that I've had a part of it in that way. I can't talk to all those people and do all the stuff that designers do so well, even though I might have a creative vision, but I can get that by helping out in crowd.
You've worked on, people just need to look at your biography, you've worked on some really intriguing different things. You jump around from big production to small production to TV to film. You don't there's no way anyone could turn around and say, oh, Viveene, she only ever does big TV, or she only does the big budget films. You do quite a lot of everything. You've done, Jurassic World, Victoria and Abdul, then Taboo and Holby City and other things like that. Do you have a preference to what you work on? Or
at the moment, I feel like I'm at the stage where I can sort of choose a little bit, which is nice. I quite like not the huge budget jobs, but I like some, I would say, the medium ones where you can work in a close team and you can be hands-on as well. So you've got enough people to do the job, but not too many. So I'm sort of the middle ground person, but I'm easy.
Well, no, it's just because I worked with you on 28 Weeks Later, which was a big film, but it was a. Pardon?
That was one of my best ever jobs.
Yeah, mine's. It's 28 Weeks and Magic Flute were two of the best jobs I've ever worked on. But 28 Weeks Later was a big film, but it wasn't actually. It was a small budget film, and everyone got their hands dirty with everything.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So that was quite a nice baptism of fire, I suppose, for you as well. Yeah. But that's the sort of size production you quite like, which is, exactly. It feels big, but it's not.
Yeah, you're all sort of pulling in together to make this thing work.
So if it's possible, what is an average day as a costume supervisor for you? What's an average day? Let's because all the variables and everything, let's go with prep. What's an average day in prep? Because that might be a bit easier than once you're filming.
Average day in prep is, I suppose, finding out what the designer's thinking, firstly, and going through your budget and seeing what you've got to spend and where you're going to go. If you're going to have where you go work with costume houses, if you're going to make things, and if you are going to make things, are you going to bring a team in to make, or are you going to outsource? So that would be an average day, and then looking through where the problems, speaking to various different departments, your line producers, your hair and makeup locations and whatnot, to start trying to put things in place if you've got the schedule. So once you've got the schedule, then it gets a little bit more, your workload gets bigger because you've got things to work to. So before you've got your schedule, you're sort of putting ideas into process. And then when you've got your schedule, you've got a foundation that you can build everything on. And so you know what deadlines you and the rest of the team are working to.
Is there any part of your job you don't like? Or is there any part of supervising that you're not a fan of, but you do anyway because it's part of the job as well? All of it. No.
You can have some really tricky conversations with people, departments that don't actually maybe know, or, well, not that they don't know, or just don't want to understand the things that you need and why you need them. But saying that, sometimes you get a good production and you get a bad production. Every job's different.
It takes the bad jobs to appreciate the good ones.
Exactly. And so the bad ones, you're like, okay, I'm going to learn from that and know how to approach that next time. But I suppose it's speaking to people that you don't necessarily want to, but do because it's part of your job. So sometimes that's quite grating when you have to do that.
How do you view the work you do? How do you view the division of the work between you and the designer? How do you see that working?
Oh gosh, our roles are completely different. I think I suppose we complement one another. So I can come at it from one angle, mainly a monetary angle, and then come at it from a creative angle. But then you've got to find a way of meeting in the middle. So they're very much creative. They do have the budget in mind because they have to, but it's not at the forefront of their mind. So I'm sort of like the one in the background with that annoying prod that's saying, no, we can't quite do that. So that's our relationship. You've got to have a good relationship with your designer as well.
Yeah, and there's also, I suppose, the view that by you concentrating on that allows them to be more creative and concentrate on what they need to.
Yeah, so they've got to be able to trust what you're doing as well and sort of leave you to it, and you sort of whisper in their ear from time to time, no, you've got to take a step back from that, or you're fine, run with it. So you're sort of the one that's tallying up in the background.
And when you mentioned before the costume houses, how important is your working relationships with the costume houses? I know you hate me, so that's an issue anyway. But how important is the relationship with the costume houses?
I think it is really important because saying I hate you there's absolutely no way.
It's not. Sorry, just to fill in, there has been a period of about 2 years that every time Viveene was on a show, it was never one of my shows, and she'd always be working with one of the other production directors. And then the one time she came straight to me, I was on paternity leave, so I couldn't work with Viveene. So it's always been Viveene hates working with me.
No, it's important that we have a good relationship because there's times where you can get us out of holes. You help us the costume houses can help quite a lot. If I said to you the production are being ridiculous and they want us to achieve that, you sort of said, I remember you saying, tell me what you've got and let's see how it can work. And it's a very much a relationship where you have to be able to work together. So you're just another part of the department, but just outside. One
of the things that that's come out of some of these conversations is, when did you start knowing? I'm just going to concentrate on angels for a second because I can. But when did you find out about angels, or how did you find out about angels? Because it's not something outside of the film industry you'd know about, I suppose.
Actually, no. So it would have been when we started FT2. We were taken on a trip to Angels. So it was at the very beginning. So I've known about you guys from 2005. So it was one of the introductions. So I don't know. I suppose if you wasn't doing the scheme, it would be if you're researching it or if you're working on a production that is a period production, not necessarily a contemporary one, where you'd get to find out about Angels and the other costume houses.
Okay. And what piece of advice would you give to someone who wants to come into costume or even become a supervisor?
Don't. No, I'm joking.
You know how many people start off with this? Everyone's got this in the back of their head. No, don't come in.
Coming into it, I suppose, almost have a passion for it. You've got to enjoy it. Like, you've got to enjoy, because we do long hours. We travel all over. So you've got to enjoy it. You've got to have a mind for it, I suppose. And be open to doing all sorts. Like, you've got to be able... There's not anything that I wouldn't do within the department. So I think you've got to be open to do anything, because some jobs are rubbish within the department. But it's got to be done because it's all part and parcel. So I think you've got to come into costume knowing that you're not necessarily going to be where you want to be straight away, and you've got to be able to work all around. And there's no person in our department or in the industry that role isn't worthwhile. Everybody has a important part to play. So if you can understand that and know that you're not go straight to the top, and you have a passion for it, I think that's the way to go. Just come into it with an open mind.
I mean, it's you the way you've done it is exactly the path that sort of exists to get to supervisor. You start out as costume trainee, you move to costume standby, you float around set and second unit, you then might become a wardrobe assistant or a design assistant for a little bit, but then once you go from there, you sort of move to supervisor, assistant, and then supervisor, and there is a path there, but you have to work at it.
Yeah.
You've got to put the hours in, no matter how big or small, because you need to have those experiences to be able to deal with the bigger ones.
Exactly. Yeah. So everything that you do is all part of the end goal, I would say.
And have you noticed many changes in what you do to what it used to be, or how the job you do now to how you perceived it when you started on the costume journey back in 2005? What's the main difference for you?
There is a difference. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing. But sometimes I feel like it's a little bit easier because the industry is booming. So the route in and getting where you want to be is a lot quicker because there is a demand there. So sometimes experience goes out of the window, but then people can catch up, and it doesn't mean that if they haven't got all that experience or all the years behind them, that they wouldn't be a good candidate. But sometimes it's just very fast moving now. Before there was people were trainees for 2 years, and then they moved on to another standby for X amount of years. But now you could almost be a trainee and then be assistant designer because the demand is there, and there's not enough of those people of the people that have been in it for X amount of years to do it. So it's a lot faster moving now.
I know you say you like the medium-sized jobs, and because it gives you the nice balance of getting your hands dirty, but also being able to do the other things as well. But if someone was come along with the dream job for you, is there a certain period or type of film or TV program that you'd love to work on? That's for me, that's got Viveene written all over it. Is there something you want like that or look for?
Well, it would have to be. It's going to sound really ridiculous, but Black Panther. I would have loved to work on Black Panther. I know it's the superhero movie, and like there's sometimes some snobbery around that. But for me, having a black costume designer win an Oscar and having certain parts of the black culture pushed to the forefront was amazing. So that would be my dream thing to work on.
Well, no, I mean, Ruth Carter did a fantastic job with Black Panther, and I don't think whatever your views might be with the awards ceremony or anything, at least Black Panther and Ruth Carter broke with the Oscar and got the recognition. Or whatever you might think about it, it was deserved. You can look at that film and look at the costumes and look at the research that was done on that production, and I don't think that's a silly thing to say at all, because I thought Black Panther was a beautiful looking film, and I completely understand that. So yeah, no, it was. I've got a booklet. I have it. One of the few films I actually have, like magazines and things about the costume, because I thought Black Panther looked phenomenal, and there's nothing that looks like it.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was amazing. Loved it. Yeah,
so Black Panther.
That would be
Black Panther 2. We're putting your advertisement out right now that you want on there. Fine. Well, Viveene, thank you so much for talking to me. I know you not apprehensive. It was you questioned why, but I genuinely think that what your story is a great one, and your view is just as important as anyone else's. So thank you so much for doing this. I hope it hasn't annoyed you too much.
Oh no, it's been fine. Thank you for having me.
I look forward to seeing you anytime. It's always a happy time to see Viveene and your.
Yeah, as long as you're not hiding or on holiday.
Well, blame my son, okay? If he hadn't turned up that time, it would all be fine. But Viv, thank you so much. It's been lovely. Thank you.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Normally at this point, I would be cutting to myself, Jonathan and Richard to talk about the interview that's just taken place. However, today's episode is a little different. When I spoke to Viveene, it was before the death of George Floyd. Our podcast was started to help shed a light on the costume industry, the people who work in it, how to get into the industry, and the different roles that do exist. In the last month, there have been major conversations happening about representation in society and industry, and film and TV is no different. We wanted to speak to Viveene as her journey through the industry is a unique one. FT2 to supervisor is not a journey many people have done. Viveene also started at the same time I did, so we both progressed in the industry at the same time. We did not talk about representation or about any challenges Viveene herself has faced due to her being a black costume person. I phoned Viveene to speak to her to see whether she wanted to talk about that and whether that was something she thought she would like to express her views and opinions on alongside the other conversation that we had. And I'm very happy to say that Viveene is here with me again.
Morning. Thanks for having me again.
We had so much fun the last time. Let's go one more round. So Viveene, have you faced challenges being a black person working in the film industry or working in costume?
I could probably say there has been sticky situations or boulders put in the way, but I'm not the sort of person to really let it get in my way, so I'd find a way to cross it. I don't acknowledge it. I literally will just keep on going. So there has been, but I sort of try not to recognise it, and I try to push it to one side and keep on going, because you've got to just keep on ploughing through whatever, because there's challenges anyway. There's always going to be challenges, and I suppose as a supervisor you wear this sort of cloak anyway. You've got to be thick-skinned, and as a female black costume person, my skin has to be a little bit thicker, and I suppose it always has, because you've grown up with it, so you learn different coping mechanisms and different ways to plough around things. So that's what I would say on challenges.
Has it affected the costume, the supervisor you've become, or is it something that you've had to deal with and therefore it's made you better? Although that's the wrong phrasing.
Yeah, no, I don't know how easy it is to. It's always going to be awkward. I think that as growing up through life, I'm quite a positive person anyway, and
yeah.
Just with the family and everybody around you, you learn different ways to cope with things. So the only thing that I would say is how it affects me is that I always want to try and outperform myself, because I always say, well, if I do a bad job, it will be the black person, the black costume supervisor, because I'm very identifiable by the colour of my skin, which it is what it is. But I suppose I overcompensate sometimes, maybe, and just go a little bit further than maybe some. They may not feel that they have to. I feel like I have to go a little bit further, because I might have that stigma or stereotype or that identifiable quality about me. Good quality, but
not meaning to focus on you too much, because I know that's also not what you would like to talk about when discussing this. Do you think there's a reason why there is a lack of representation in costume? Or do you think there is a reason for it, be it whether it's the industry itself or lack of role models, or do you think there's something you think causes it?
I think it is probably the industry itself, because not many people know it as a job. So I think that I didn't know it as a job. It was by chance that I saw an advert in a newspaper when I was working in the theatre, and I had no idea that this was an actual job. So I think that, I suppose, the exposure of it needs to be more. You need to be able to reach more people in different ways that maybe is the normal way to reach people. So I think maybe more in schools, more in colleges, just introducing it earlier into life. And because there was nobody in my family that necessarily, well, there was nobody in my family that does this job. So therefore, I didn't know it was a job. So I think if people know from earlier that it is a viable career path, it is an option, then you'll start to see more people of colour coming into the industry as a whole.
Not to say there are things happening now. There have been a few smaller things happening beforehand, but they weren't strong enough, or whether they weren't loud enough or had enough traction. And I know certain organisations are now taking upon themselves to try and address the problem, as you've just you've eloquently put it, which is it's not knowing this is a possibility for a career, especially on the costume side. It's not known as a career, but there are organizations like that are trying to try and address this. I mean, Beck2's costume department would be one of the first examples I can point to, with the Zoom On Up program, which they've started running. And I know BAFTA and the BFI are looking at things themselves, but are you aware of anything that you think actually is helping or can help?
I think that now, like all of these, I think people were working in different ways, because before the lockdown, I think lockdown's played a part in it as well, that people have been able to connect with one another. So it wasn't necessarily that things weren't going on. I think that people may have been working separately, because, you know, I was trying to do things, but I was working on my own. But now we've sort of found each other, so to speak. It's becoming a lot more active, and a lot more things are starting to happen. Like with some people that I've connected with recently, we've managed to put together an educational school program, and they've done their first Zoom conference call with a class of year sixes and year fives who were, you know, quite a diverse school. So, and they had never thought of it as an option. So now and we're going to be able to get into more schools. And when lockdown when schools open up, we'll be able to get into secondary schools and carry it forward that way. So I think that lockdown has been a good, even though it's been bad, but I have to say it's been bad as well. But it's been a cause for people to, you know, a range of different things. People have come together more, and you've been able to make things work, whereas before people didn't really have time. So I think there's been a way to think about things and really put it to work and get out there. So I think that there's been a shift in the path.
Does this program that you set up, does it have a name yet? Is it official, or is it still sort of just being worked out at the moment?
It's still being worked out, but we have it is other costume designers and costume people within the industry that have come together during lockdown. We had our first Zoom call with maybe 30 odd other black costume people, which for me, that was amazing, because I thought I was maybe one or five, but to find out there was more than 30 was quite an amazing thing. And now we're sort of putting things together, like we're developing things. So not official yet, but we're getting that way. We're on the path of it becoming a recognised organisation.
When that does come out and it is official, we will promote we'll put it on our website, we'll push it across our channels so people can see that information. So please do keep revisiting the website or our social media pages, and we'll put it there. Otherwise, the easiest way would be, I suppose, find Viveene on social media, although I'm not sure she's going to want me to promote her social media account. So if you follow on ours, we will provide that link back to Viveene and the organisation, and so you can get straight there when it is official. But that sounds a fantastic thing to have been set up, and I can't wait to see what you guys do with it.
I would say that the traction and the momentum that's going needs to keep going, and it needs to not subside, because otherwise things won't change. And I think that over the next few years, there's going to be a lot of awkwardness and a lot of people feeling awkward and a bit uncomfortable. But I think it's probably for the greater good, and then it will become the normal, and it won't be something that we'll have to talk about. So I suppose we have to just keep going until it's not awkward anymore and it is the normal thing. And I won't turn up to a meeting after having a conversation with somebody on the phone and them having that surprised look and me having to wait for them to stop thinking, oh, it's a black woman, rather than it's just a woman. that I was talking to on the phone.
I'm not sure there's much more I can say on that. And the only thing that comes to my mind when listening to what you say and everything is also that it's obviously very easy to forget that film and TV is a portrayal of representation, and there's a power in the voices being heard and the perspectives being portrayed, and we need to make sure that every voice and every perspective is heard and portrayed.
I think you're right, because I suppose it filters out throughout. So once it's all in all the departments and on TV as well, and we're not on TV doing certain sort of stereotypes.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the time again. I'm sorry to tear you away from your family for a second time, but I look forward to seeing you soon. And if there's anything else that we can do, please let us know. But as I said, when we have that information, we'll put it out. And again, thank you for talking about what is a extremely sensitive subject, but shouldn't be, and something that's extremely important to you. And so thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
I want to thank Viveene again for coming back to speak to us a second time. And if you would like to know more about the school outreach program that Viveene is involved in, please email theblackcostumenetwork@gmail.com. That's theblackcostumenetwork@gmail.com. The next episode we will release is Jonathan's conversation with set and costume designer Morgan Large. Here is a small excerpt from that chat.
In the early days, my dream was always to design a musical on the West End. And I found myself doing that at the age of 24. So after that, I then had to just recalibrate what my dream and what my ambition was going to be. And I think along the way, I tried to be a sponge. I tried to absorb and listen to people and to take information from people and learn from other people's skills around me. And I think ultimately now my dream is to keep on getting better and better at what I do.